Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Masks Off. I'm Kim Gross, and today I have with me Jessica Hiatt. And I'm going to share with you a quote that Jessica shared with me, and then we'll see what that quote means to her. The quote is by Wes Watson, and it is, "We don't rise to our goals. We fall to the strength and comprehension of our system. We must clarify and strengthen our system through repetition. Sitting, waiting, and regretting is much harder than doing." So welcome, Jessica. Thanks so much for being here. Oh my God, that is such a powerful freaking quote. What does that mean to you, and why did you choose that one?
Thank you so much. Well, that quote just embodies everything about me and everything that I teach my personal training clients, that these daily habits and commitments we have to ourselves and our own process gives us that personal power, that sense of confidence that we are always looking for. And, in the past, maybe I looked for those things outside of myself from other people, but creating these rituals for myself, I'm able to just find it within.
That's awesome. Love it. So tell us a little bit. You just mentioned a little bit, you're a personal trainer.
Mhm.
And what else would you like to share with the audience about yourself?
Yeah, so I'm building my personal training business right now for the second time. I did it probably 6 or 7 years ago, but went through a really horrible abusive marriage and kind of shut things down for a while. And I've done enough healing from that whole situation that it's opened up the feeling I'm compelled now to get that back out into the world and integrate a whole lot more than just, the fitness and the nutrition, but everything else I learned along the way, healing in my own journey from abuse. And I just want to help other women go through that process as well.
Awesome. So you already just started sharing vulnerably. So I
Yeah.
can tell that you're going to say yes to the next question anyway. And I want to say, though, before I ask that question, one thing is that, so I've been watching your videos and following you, and you're on TikTok, and I see you on Instagram and on Facebook. And what I do love about what you're doing is that while on the one hand, you are talking about fitness and you're talking about nutrition and you show videos for different exercises, but you are bringing in this whole other component that's so freaking important, which is the mental, emotional part of it, like what women are going through. And oftentimes, like all of that shit can get in the way of us doing what the quote says, because we're so overwhelmed and flooded by what's going on in our lives that the last thing that we do is take care of ourselves from a fitness nutrition standpoint. So I think you're really bringing in the whole gamut. You're addressing the body, you're addressing the mind and the spirit. And that to me is like really unique. That's a unique trademark for a personal trainer. When I think of personal trainers, I just think about like exercise and diet and nutrition. So I
Yeah.
love that you're bringing this into the world. So that's great. Awesome for you.
Thank you.
Now, are you ready to take off your mask and be vulnerable?
Yes.
All right, let's take off our masks. So you mentioned a couple of things. You talked about your relationship that you were in 6 years ago. You talked about abuse and things of that nature. But because you are also a personal trainer and what all the things that I just mentioned, how do you feel that perfectionism gets in the way of people sticking to their goals even?
I think people get an ideal. They get attached to, let's say, the really superficial piece of it of, I need to weigh this certain number on the scale. And they're so attached to getting to that number. And they're so attached to having their body look a certain way. And, that's perfect for them. That's the perfect ideal physique that they want. It becomes unattainable. And they ignore everything else that's necessary in order to get to their ideal physique. Because if you just feel bad about yourself all the time and you're constantly saying these self-deprecating thoughts to yourself all the time, it's just self-sabotage. It's like a vicious cycle of, I want to be this size, but I'm not good enough, so I might as well eat. And you just get stuck in this negative feedback loop. And it's all just a distraction from feeling your real feelings and taking accountability for who you are right now.
Yeah. And you know what? When you and I had a conversation before, I talked about my own story, which is just that, like, it used to be this all or nothing kind of thinking. And well, first of all, it might have been after I had my first child. So I was probably 30-ish, and I had put on all this weight from being pregnant. So I went to Weight Watchers. And that was awful because, like, I mean, I understand the concept behind it. And this is old Weight Watchers. This is way back. They have really come a long way. And I understand why you go in and get weighed every week, because the accountability piece. But when you're struggling with perfectionism, the way that I struggled, every time I got on the scale to get weighed, if I went up like just a half a pound, and half a pound can be for so many number of reasons, right? Like I could have really probably done well all week long, but if the scale showed that I went up this half a pound, which it did many times, it was like, fuck it. I'm just going to go home. I felt so frustrated, so disappointed. Like, how can a scale define how I feel about myself? But it did. And it does for so many people. I know so many people that weigh themselves every single day.
Mm-hmm.
And if it's not saying what you want it to say, then there's this all or nothing mentality, which is perfectionism. Okay, then I'm not, you know what? Now I'm not going to go to the gym at all. You know what? Now I'm just going to eat a whole half a gallon of ice cream, which is what I would do sometimes.
Might as
So,
well.
any thoughts on that piece of it? And do you have any of that kind of story from your past?
For sure. So like the first half of my fitness journey, I guess, it was very perfectionism based. I was obsessed. I was a bikini competitor. I was a personal trainer. So I was literally being judged on how perfect my body looked in a swimsuit. And I got into that mindset of, I have to be perfect. I have to be what the judges are looking for. And if I'm not, like, if I gained an ounce, I would beat myself up and punish myself with cardio and even more restricted eating. And when you do that, it has a rebound effect. Your metabolism slows down even more, and it's even more of a struggle. And then it's just that negative feedback loop again. But honestly, I was so codependent at the time. I'd spent my entire childhood and up until that point in self-love deficit disorder, just constantly trying to prove myself and be validated by everyone around me, never within myself. Like, looking within was not anything I ever did. And honestly, through that second marriage, all of that was stripped away. He literally destroyed all that identifying with that perfect image I had. And it was the best thing that ever happened.
Can you say more about how he destroyed that?
Yeah. He's narcissist, and I know that's a really flippant term that people throw around a lot these days, but I'm pretty positive if he went to a psychiatrist, he would be diagnosed as narcissistic personality disorder and possibly sociopath. He's very, very sick, um, gaslighting constantly. And we went through a period in 2016. It was like the peak of the abuse, where for a 3-month period, he literally terrorized me with physical abuse, mental abuse, emotional abuse, financial abuse. He took control of all the money. I was being monitored on cameras in our home 24/7. It was so destructive. Like it broke me as far as you can be broken down before, suicide. That's the point I got to. But I tell the story a lot. I was dead inside. I got to a point where I was dead inside, and it really was the death of that person I used to be, that codependent enabler, doing everything for everyone. Because I got to this point with him at the end of those 3 months where I was like, there is never gonna be enough. Like, I am never going to be able to do enough to get you to stop this. It's never ever gonna stop. And to get to that point was like, holy shit.
Yeah.
Maybe it's not me. Maybe it's him.
Yes. Yes.
And so that point started me on this journey of like self-awareness, self-discovery, spiritual awakening. I just went down this totally different path away from that external validation. But I had to go through all that pain in order to get there.
Oh, absolutely. Well, first of all, thank you so much for being so vulnerable and really taking off your mask. I think it's really helpful when we can really share that those deep wounds and that deep pain, because there are so many people out there that are feeling it, and experiencing it and feeling like, at least when they hear you share, like, I'm not alone. So that's so important to share that story and share that message. So thank you for that. And you said like you had to go through the pain, and I totally agree that you have to go through the pain to get to the other side. And then the other thing is that you said, okay, well, I understand now, like, it's not me, it could be him. And you came to that realization. So first of all, I guess I would ask, prior to that, did you feel like it was your fault and you were the one to blame, so to speak?
Yeah. So all this happened in 2016, but what triggered it is I actually cheated on him. I didn't have sex with the guy, but I went on a girls' trip to Vegas, and we hung out with a bunch of guys at the pool and then hung out with them the rest of the day. And I ended up making out with one of them.
Yep.
And I felt so much shame, like the deepest shame you could ever imagine. I was so just beside myself.
Yeah.
And my friend told me, she's like, don't tell him, don't confess. It's not that big a deal. You're never going to do it again. But I couldn't not tell him, because I felt so bad. And I was like, how did we get to a point in our marriage that I'd be okay doing that?
Yep.
we need to work on this. Like, our marriage is in trouble. Yeah, I did this thing, but obviously our marriage is not doing well if I'm at this point. And so I came home and I told him, and I did not know what narcissistic rage or even narcissist was prior to this. I had
Mm.
no clue about any of that. And I confessed, and it triggered an episode of narcissistic rage in him that lasted that 3 months.
Yep.
So he used my own shame against me to terrorize me and abuse me for that 3 months. And when I've talked to like therapists and other people about this now after the fact, they've said it was not me cheating on him that actually caused that rage. Like, that was his finally the opportunity for him to let all that come out.
Yeah.
And so, but yeah, that shame that
Yeah.
I felt, that I started with, and then he used that. And so that whole 3 months was just the most shameful, rotten, like, and that's probably why I put up with it for 3 full months, because I
Oh,
thought I deserved it. I was
yeah.
like, well, I did this thing. I ruined our relationship. It's all on me. It's all me. And
Yeah.
he used that.
Yeah, and you know what? And that's an interesting point because when a person uses guilt on another person, it's such a powerful weapon, right? And that's what often a narcissist will do, is use that guilt and that gaslighting to control another.
Mm-hmm.
And then what ends up happening for the person on the other side, or the codependent, is, and this is what it sounds like you were experiencing, is that it comes down to what Brene Brown says all the time: the difference between guilt and shame is, guilt is, okay, I may have done something wrong or bad by cheating with this guy. That's doing something, rather than I am bad.
Mm-hmm.
That's shame. And that's in what
Yeah.
I hear you saying. And I too, throughout so much of my life, just felt I was inherently bad.
Mm-hmm.
And I just recently did, I think it was like a TikTok where I talked about, you know, speaking up and speaking out, and where I've always felt I couldn't speak up or speak out about my family situation because we weren't supposed to, quote unquote, tell the family secrets. And if I did speak up, I felt like I was really bad, like a bad
Yeah.
girl, you know?
Yeah.
And so that's what keeps us stuck in that place. And then let's bring it all the way full circle to what we were talking about in the beginning about the fitness and training, is that then we do the same thing to ourselves when we're working out, like going back to that perfectionism piece. If we're not being perfect and working out or eating in a perfect way, then, at least for me, I started shaming myself and feeling like I was so bad, because especially like since I was, I think, around 7 years old, I've been a compulsive overeater. I can remember at the age of 7, um, sitting with a half a gallon of ice cream in front of me, or a whole package of Oreos, and just going through the entire sleeve, not even knowing how much I was eating, not even tasting it, but just shoving it in my mouth.
Yeah.
Now one could say maybe a little bit there's some genetics to that, because my mom was a compulsive overeater and so many family members were as well. But I also know that there was a time where I started to use that to deal with the pain, to deal
Mm-hmm.
with when I was trying to escape feeling certain emotions or pain, I would just eat. So
Yep.
I was a little girl. It's like I didn't even have control over it. But yet, as a teenager and my adult years, when I was overweight, would feel so ashamed for it. And I would go to friends' houses, like when I was in high school, and they wouldn't need to sit there and eat a whole thing of cookies. it didn't appear, like, at least they didn't do it in front of me. So it was like, but I wanted, like, if I was sleeping over, I wanted food, but I couldn't get it. And I felt like there was something inherently wrong with me.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Do you have like any thoughts on that to share?
Yeah, it's very common. It's very, very common. And we always say, we're numbing out with food. We're numbing. You're not really numb though. You're getting high. You're getting high on food, these hyper palatable foods like ice cream, sugary carbs, fat. They release dopamine in our brain and we get high. And then we don't feel the bad feelings. We only feel the good stuff that's happening. And it also triggers that survival instinct in our brain that says, eat the food that's available. Like sugar and fat, it's in our DNA to eat all that until it's gone, because we don't know when the next famine or when the next available food will be there. So we have this like caveman thing in us still to eat it until it's gone. And so it works hand in hand, like the binge eating, the carbs, the fats, then we feel guilty, then we shame ourselves. Well, then we need to get high again to feel to feel better, and so we eat some more.
Oh my gosh. But you just really simplified it. It's so true. Like that is what happens. That is totally what happens. So let's just then talk for a minute about then what's your approach and how do you help people to not be in this perfectionistic place, and if they are in that kind of looping, what's your approach to helping people to overcome this?
Mm-hmm. The number one place to start is self-love, basically. And it's figuring out in your own mind who you want to be. Like, what is your most ideal version of self? And loving her enough to start creating her, to start building the lifestyle that she would lead. Mm-hmm. So you are creating your best self, not perfect, not what you think perfect you looks like, but it's you. It's what you feel on the inside, what you want to be. If you could be anything, who is she? And then you start creating her. And it has nothing to do with the food you're eating. It has nothing to do with the number on the scale. It's about the actions. It's about the behaviors. Like, how does this woman act and live her life? And then do that.
And so I can relate to that because I've been doing that over the course of many years now. And so if there's someone that's listening and says, okay, yep, Jessica, that's all well and good. I can create her. I can see her. What happens when, all right, for the first week, I'm doing really well. Second week, maybe months, I'm doing really well. And then like, I'm slipping up. I can't keep creating. I'm not getting where I want to be with her. Like, and it's just not happening. I'm not getting the outcome that I want. How do you help someone to stay the course?
So that's where I like to look at the brain and the different areas of the brain that are there, and also our soul, like our spirit, our true essence, because that's who we want to keep the hands on the wheel. We want our true essence to be the one in the driver's seat. And so when these other thoughts come in that are trying to self-sabotage or, you know, maybe not shaming ourselves, but starting to say, oh, well, you're not losing the weight, you're not getting the results, you've been doing all the things. That is still just a sneaky way that part of the brain starts whispering in your ear to get you off course, to get your hands off the wheel, to set you up for that binging behavior or those other behaviors that caused you to gain weight in the first place. Because most of my clients are trying to lose weight. And so it's recognizing that voice and those whispers are not your true essence. And so you have to define for yourself. It's like journaling is a great way, affirmations are a great way, power lists are a great way. So like I said before, when you figure out what that ideal version of you is, write it down so it's in front of your eyes. And anytime those whispers or thoughts start to come in, you look at that list or that affirmation or that journal entry of your ideal self, and any thought that comes in that is not in alignment with that, you know that it's that self-sabotaging part of your brain trying to take over.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I think we had talked the last time too about being really going along with that self-sabotaging thoughts, the inner dialogue of even being mindful of, because I've said it so many times, when I lose 20 pounds, then I'll be happy when I lose 20 pounds. I've lost 20 pounds and gained 20 pounds so many times over my life. And I cannot say that I have, been happier when I lost the weight. Did I feel better? Yes, of course. When I'm lighter, thinner, I feel better in my body, but it didn't, make me feel whole. Like you're talking about that essence. It wasn't in
still you.
I was still me. I was still
Yeah.
the old me with all the old patterns, with all the masks. I was still wearing the masks. Like when I did that Weight Watchers after having my son, yeah, I lost 25 pounds, but I still was wearing all the masks and I was still just as miserable because I was this people pleasing, perfecting, performing person that couldn't show up fully authentic. I couldn't show up in my wholeness. I didn't know what the frig that meant to show up in my wholeness. It wasn't until just doing the recovery work and staying on the path and just, little by little, taking the masks off and healing. I had to heal all of the pain and all of those wounds from childhood or that I came into this lifetime with, that I could really understand what it meant to come from wholeness and how to unhook from all those patterns. So, and being able to be aware, like you just said, the mind, like, oh my God, the thoughts, my patterns, my mind will freaking, and it's meant to do that. Our minds are meant to do that to keep us safe,
Yes.
but we're not living in the cave days where the bear's around the corner and going to attack. We have a more evolved brain now, and now we can learn how to source our own safety. We can learn how to source our own love. And not only that, but we were conditioned throughout society that we were conditioned and trained to look outside of ourselves. Like the way our education system is set up.
Yeah.
Grades and sports and accolades, we're set up to look outside of ourselves for validation and worth. We're not trained or taught how to go inward.
Yeah.
So I think that it is a journey for sure, but I love what you're saying about the essence part, the wholeness part, having the hands on the wheel and filling when we can really truly get to a place of filling our cups from within. And I don't know what your thoughts are on this. I feel like everything else just eventually falls into place, not perfectly, but more so.
Yes. Well, and that's the key is, so instead of being attached to the end result,
Yeah.
you focus on these self-care practices, because in my opinion, exercise, proper nutrition, that is self-care.
It
There's
is.
different levels of discipline within those things, but it is self-care, and committing to those daily. Like, this is how I'm eating, this is how I'm training, this is how I'm drinking, this is how I'm sleeping. I am committed to these daily habits, day after day after day, no matter what, because I am so committed to me and being the best version of me for myself. I don't care if I ever weigh this certain number. I don't care, because I have built so much confidence and so much personal power in just that daily process of sticking to my habits no matter what, that it doesn't matter. Like, I'm untouchable because I've cultivated this power within myself just with those daily habits.
Yeah, I love that. And you know what? And again, just to be mindful of the whole perfection thing for anyone who's listening, if you miss, like, if you happen to miss a day, like, that's okay. Like, if one of your practices, I'm going to meditate for 10 minutes every day, but you miss one,
Mm-hmm.
it's not all or nothing. Just okay,
Right.
the next day you pick up on it. You just pick up.
Well, and that's it. That's the other piece is, if, I call them it's stacking wins for the day. Or so you take a W or you take an L. Maybe something happened that day, you were sick, you
Yeah.
overslept, so whatever, you take an L for the day and that's it. You don't beat yourself up about it. You don't even think about it, because
Yeah.
if you do, then that saboteur is waiting to be like, yes, you piece of crap, let's go have a binge party. You ruined it, so let's like, you just say, oh, okay, that happened, I learned, now on to the next day. Like, I'm gonna get a W the next day instead of an L.
Yeah, that's beautiful. So throughout this whole conversation, you have given so many gems and jewels. And I'm just wondering, as we conclude, is there one thing? I know it's hard to just pinpoint one, but one thing, one takeaway for the listeners that you would want to give.
One takeaway, just that every result in your life is just feedback. It's neutral, it's not positive or negative, and there's lessons in all of it. And if you're just unattached to the positive or the negative and you just take it as feedback, that gives you more strength than anything else.
Mm, that's awesome. How can people find you? Because they need to find you. Like I said to
Yeah.
you before we started recording, that just listening to your videos, your TikToks, I already changed up and switched up a commitment that I now am making to myself. So thank you. You're super helpful. But if people want to find you, where can they find you?
Well, I'm on TikTok and Instagram as Jessica Lynn Trainer. That's all one word. And then I also have a free Facebook group for
Mm.
women specifically called Ignite Her. We do a lot of different type of posting in there, different from Instagram and TikTok. It's more of a community. There's a lot of connecting between members. It's not just me talking and giving advice. There's a real community of support there. And then my regular Facebook is just Jessica Hiatt.
Awesome. And you do one-on-one coaching? Like, how do you work with
Mhm.
people? Tell us that.
I do online coaching, online training, nutrition, and my paid clients were in a private Facebook group where you get a lot more value, kind of similar to the value I provide on TikTok and Instagram, but a lot more in depth with the actual processes for self-worth and discipline, and on top of the nutrition and training.
Awesome. Awesome. So thank you again for being here today. Such a great conversation. You were awesome in taking off your mask today. I really appreciate that again.
Thank you for having me. That was fun.
It was a lot of fun. So thank you everybody for tuning in to another episode of Masks Off. I highly encourage that you look up Jessica, reach out to her. I'm sure you won't regret it. And as always, if you enjoyed this episode, we would love if you left us a comment, if you have any questions, and then to like or subscribe. So until next time, take care, everybody.